What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Game Time Discussions. I'm Emery Cuzzy. I'm sitting here with Cameron Selby, and we are doing the Week 16 Saturday special. Two games on tap. We're going to do both showdowns for the KC and Houston game, and we're going to do Baltimore-Pittsburgh, so both sides. And then also we're going to do the two-gamer because why not do an awesome primetime slate this week? But yeah, we'll get into it.
Yeah, this one's going to be a whole lot of fun. And on top of that, we're going to be talking about these four teams a lot because these four teams are going to meet in different matchups on Christmas. And we're going to have a Christmas special as well with Houston playing Baltimore, Kansas City playing Pittsburgh.
Right.
And that's going to be Wednesday, so we'll be recording that, I believe, Monday. But yeah, we'll be talking about that a lot. But we're going to break down the showdowns first. And then we're going to get into the two-game slate. Should be a whole lot of fun. Should be similarities with the plays and what have you.
We're going to look at the Pittsburgh-Baltimore game. And we'll start with Pittsburgh. Looking at the receivers, we're going to assume George Pickens is out or in.
Because it's a hamstring injury and he was ruled doubtful, like as of last Monday.
Yeah.
For the following game. Usually when you're doubtful, you don't really have much of a chance on a short week to return the following week. So he really needs to practice in full on Wednesday for me to even be comfortable.
Right, for sure.
Considering him in. And even if he is in, 10-6 is a lot of money to go, even though it's a good matchup. But really, I'm kind of hoping that he is out because there's a lot of value from the Pittsburgh side if he is indeed not going to play.
So let's assume that he's out and go from there. And, of course, if he's in, he's viable. He's one of the better receivers, and, Russ is going to look for him. So definitely click his name if you are comfortable playing the receiving side of this game. But the other guys that we have to talk about, Pratt Freiermuth, who had a solid game this last week with 3 for 22 and a touchdown, gave him 11.2 points. He's had over 10 points in the last 3 games, been solid. And then Calvin Austin has been what is the backup, the next guy up if George Pickens is out. He had 5 for 5 for 65 this last week against Philly. Solid numbers. He's a 4,800. I think it's a good price for somebody like that.
Yeah, Calvin Austin was the guy that stuck out for me, and I'm going to be bringing his name up a lot in the when we talk about the two-game slate because his price is just way, way too cheap. At least in this one, you got to kind of indulge in it a little bit because there are some Pittsburgh receivers that are at least getting snaps that are minimum price for some reason kind of thing. And,
right.
But, yeah, Calvin Austin, pretty safe. He's been the one that has stepped up the most from a upside perspective. We've seen a showdown contest where he caught a touchdown that you called out as your tournament play, I believe, that week, or at least the last guy in.
Yeah.
And, again, like you said, 5 for 65 last week. 3 of the last 4 games, at least double-digit points. So, yeah, he is in the pool. It's a good matchup.
And then going over to the other guys, Mike Williams and Van Jefferson, kind of like the last 2 guys in the dart throw-wise, 3,400 and 3,000. Wanted to add them on here. Not much to say. I guess Mike Williams has been actually...
Mike Williams is the only one I don't want to play.
Yeah.
Because his snap share with George Pickens out has not increased really at all. He had 35% of the snaps last week, but they played way less snaps. So his 15 snaps was the lowest in 5 weeks. But because they played so few, that's why his percentage was the highest.
Gotcha.
But he's not being used at all. It just is what it is. I'm not paying $3,400 for him. I'd rather pay Van Jefferson, who at least runs cardio and gets on the field 75% of the time. I'd rather play Scotty Miller, who's, I believe, minimum price.
Yeah.
Because he's at
800.
800. Okay, so under 1,000 because he played 52% of the snaps week 14. Last week was way less in a kind of weirder game script, but also against the number 1 scoring defense this year, or at least yardage defense. And then also Ben Skoranek, who 3 straight games, 33%, 31%, 23% of the snaps. He's minimum price. 2 of the 3 games he's got a target, but they're for 17 and 23 yards.
Right.
Is when he catches it. So him being minimum price, I'd
Sure.
rather do that as well.
Yeah.
So Mike Williams of any of the Pittsburgh receivers, if Pickens is out, is still dead last for me in terms of my interest.
Gotcha. And then the running side of the game, there's 2 guys, of course. They've had this situation all year. The 7,600 Najee and 7,200 Jaylen Warren. Najee's preferred, of course. He actually averages about 5.5 points more fantasy points per game, but he did kind of have a dud in this weird Philly game. Something we have to talk about.
Negative game script again.
Yeah.
Philly's probably the hottest defense right now. They're not getting all the turnovers and pick sixes that Denver is, but they're not allowing points, which is what Denver has been doing against good teams.
Plus, you said the snaps were a lot lower this last week for Pittsburgh because of the Philly situation. So with that happening, you have less opportunities, and Najee obviously only had 6 on rushing. So
Yeah, and he also had a season low 33% of the snaps as a result. Jaylen Warren at least is kind of getting back into the, basically splitting it 50-50, which is good to see. But Najee being, a 20 upside touch player, even in the last game that they did play against Baltimore. Again, Baltimore is really good against the run, but he still had 93 yards on 22 opportunities, or 23 opportunities. He had 22 touches. Had 13 points, reasonable. He didn't score, but if this is a low-scoring game where he's the only one that scores, he's going to be optimal as a result. 7,600 is not that expensive to spend up on.
Right. In this game, which I didn't say at the beginning, but it's a 44.5 point total. Baltimore's -6. So, I mean, it's really not that many points, actually. 19.25 is what they're projected. So that's actually the least out of the 4 teams we're going to talk about today. So I thought it might be a little bit higher. Now that I'm looking at it, it's not as good as I thought it was. But Jaylen Warren, 7.7, but he has had more opportunities to get on the field recently. He is out there to catch the ball, mostly because he is not getting the touches in the rushing game. Even knowing he had more snaps in the game against Cleveland, he had 7 less rushing attempts.
Yeah, with him, it's the pass catching upside because he's got four straight games other than last week where he had at least 4 targets, and he's usually a good PPR back, getting he's got a 14-yard average, 12-yard average in there, but he usually makes well when he gets those targets and opportunities. I think Najee is going to have more touches, but maybe he's going to have the more important touches if they're trailing and has more pass catching upside. Again, weird game last week against Philly, but they need somebody to help push the ball down the field because 2 straight games they have looked very inept offensively without George Pickens, and if he's out again, they have to find ways to not make that 3 straight. They did win the first game against Baltimore. Doing a sweep would go a long way of locking up this division. That's why I think that they're really going to try to do some things to steal this game.
Yeah, fair enough. And then let's go over to the other side of the game, looking at the Baltimore side. Baltimore has some pass catchers we have to talk about. They're a good amount, actually. All 3 of these guys here are going to be the main guys. Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, and Mark Andrews. And then Isaiah Likely's in play. Deontay's not in play. Nelson Aguilar's not in play. I guess that's it.
Yeah, and again, Deontay Johnson is away from the team even following his suspension. So he's, again, as soon as that trade happened and they were like, that's the last piece that's going to put Baltimore over the top, and look, if he could do that with Andy Dalton, what is he going to do with Lamar? And I was like, that is the worst offense for him. And lo and behold, that was a disaster of a trade for them. Obviously, they didn't give up a day 1 or day 2 pick for him, but It was just never going to work out. And on top of that, Rashad Bateman has actually finally started to show his stuff and what he's capable of. He had back-to-back touchdowns last week, deep balls, 3 for 80 and 2 scores, but he's got 7 touchdowns on the year. He's got plenty of boom games like this where he has the 15-plus point upside. As a wide receiver, too, I always thought he could work. He was never going to be a 10-target guy, but he's got the boom. Obviously, you see 26 yards a catch, 21 yards a catch, 15 yards a catch. Overall this year, I think he's north of 15 yards if I'm looking up his overall stats this year, 17 yards a catch. So that is exactly what you want in a wide receiver too. $7,000, kind of pricey, more in the tournament range, but I don't think that this is a slate where you're really going to have a hard time getting to him if you really, truly want to get to him.
Yep. And then going over to the other guys, Zay Flowers has been inconsistent, I guess is the best way to put it. It's very based on how the game is going if he is going to get the ball. So if the game is where Baltimore's winning, he's not going to touch the ball. It's all going to be Derrick Henry. And if it's the other way around, he will get a bunch of targets, and then you'll get the Justice Hill in the game and things like that. Inconsistency's been bad. Well,
Baltimore is very frustrating
yes.
As a whole.
Agreed.
And you talk our Sunday live slate, or Sunday live stream, at the very end, I asked you who was the scariest player to you. You said Zay Flowers, and I said Derrick Henry. They had 5 touchdowns.
Both of them sucked.
5 touchdowns, and neither scored.
Yeah,
that's just kind of what you got to live and die by with Baltimore. And so that's why it's so frustrating a lot of times. But in showdown slates, at least you have to force some of these guys in, which it makes a little bit more sense. $9,000 for a wide receiver one, not bad at all. At least he has the floor of a 10-point upside for most games. But he's also got some boom, and he's kind of due for one of those boom games. So against Pittsburgh, who's been more susceptible, they just allowed nearly 300 yards passing to the lowest volume passing team in the NFL last week to both Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. So it's there for him if he wants it. That's just kind of – it starts with Baltimore's passing attack. I'm probably going to be fitting Zay Flowers because he's going to just organically be able to stack with the Lamar in that instance.
Fair. Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. Mark Andrews has come on to the end of the season, which is great. Finally 6,400. Let's look at his game log real quick. He has scored the touchdowns. That's what all that matters. 4 out of 5. It doesn't matter how good he's done over here. I promise. If he's scoring the touchdowns, he's got a floor, 6,400. He's a reasonable price. He's the guy I'm going to be getting to, absolutely, especially if I want the Lamar build.
Yeah, I was always frustrated because basically we've seen, 5 showdowns now for Baltimore this year, and he was just 5,000 or less since the week 1 travesty or panic mode of Isaiah Likely going off for what would have been 2 touchdowns and 130 yards, and he didn't really play. And then a couple weeks into it, back-to-back no-catch games, and the sky is falling, and then all of a sudden he catches 8 touchdowns, and all is well again. Obviously didn't have a lot of targets last week, but that was also because they were just up so much against the Giants. I expect this to be a much closer contested game. So 6,400 is still reasonable, even though it's finally kind of where his price should be, which is a welcome sight.
Yep. And then let's talk some game script. Well,
first off,
defense. Running back. Yeah, let's talk with this guy.
You can throw in Lamar too, because
running back.
It's one or the other to me in this game. I don't think that there's a way you can afford both. Justice Hill, $4,000. Sign me up if you're thinking what I'm thinking. Last time you did it in week 1 as your tournament play, it worked out pretty well. Last week I mentioned in the first look main, I was like, if you don't like Derrick Henry, getting Justice Hill at 4,800, he has the same matchup.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not close and Derrick Henry doesn't score in that 45% of the snaps, Justice Hill might. And lo and behold, 18 fantasy points, he probably was less than 1% owned.
Yeah.
I just didn't play him. I didn't listen to myself. But $4,000, his price might be the cheapest it's been on a true showdown. I see some 32 and 36, but those are, small Sunday main showdown slates specifically. But yeah, he's really, really cheap for the snaps that he plays. Last week in a blowout game, still played 37%, but he's been north of 30% every single game this season, and he's their pass catching back. So if they are trailing or in a 2-minute drill, he's the guy in. Mm-hmm. Derrick Henry's not getting any snaps or touches doing that. So $4,000, really interesting. Derrick Henry, $12,000. Really, really tough to get to. And again, I think you need to decide on one or the other because he's probably going to fall into the end zone. But again, you saw the Pittsburgh game where at that point in the season, I believe his 11.5 fantasy points, which he did score, but only 65 yards on the game, was his second lowest score of the entire season.
Yeah.
And then obviously he had a dud last week to eclipse that. To me, it's just it's tough matchups for both him and Lamar. You got to pick one. And I wanted to bring up, again, Lamar, week 11, he was on the early only slate, the most popular play at north of 40% owned. And my notes when I wrote, my first thing was I'm fading him because in career games against Pittsburgh, he had 7 interceptions at the time in 4 games against Pittsburgh, had never beaten them, sacked 20 times, and averaged less than 16 points a game. Well, what did he do in that game? Did not score 16 points, only scored 1 touchdown, and also threw a pick and got sacked a ton. So his struggles against Pittsburgh has been really paramount. The thing is, who else are you going to spend up on? Because you're not fading both of these guys.
No.
You just can't from a raw points game if you think it's going to be a lower scoring game. And he's been playing better as of late. Obviously a 5-touchdown game last week. His rushing upside has been up there. He's had several games of 60-plus yards and scoring touchdowns. And this is his best season to me of his career, and he's a 2-time MVP, and he's still not going to win the MVP.
No.
That's how well he's played. I'd probably side with Lamar even knowing he struggles against Pittsburgh instead of Derrick Henry. But it's a really, really uncomfortable conversation. I just think my one stand is I'm not playing both, which I think a lot of people are going to try to fit in both.
That's fair. Well, Now, what does your game script look like?
So my game script, I think this is another grinded out game. Last game, Baltimore, following a game where they scored 35 or allowed 30 plus points against Cincinnati and still won the game. They followed that up, and then Pittsburgh did not score a touchdown and
Right.
still beat them. I think Pittsburgh typically kind of has their number in a grinded out game. So if it gets too ugly, I think Pittsburgh can still find a way to pull this off. I am going to pick Lamar and the Baltimore Ravens to win. I believe my score is 20-13. Ugly game, raw points. Try to find the guys that get the 2 touchdowns for Baltimore. 3 touchdowns maybe, but I still really think that this is an ugly game where probably these 2 teams combine for 3 or less touchdowns.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be on a little bit higher. I'm going to pick Lamar also. I have it 27-13. I had him getting extra touchdown. And I just think, like you said, Lamar's been playing great. And in 9 out of his 14 games, he's had multi-touchdown passing games, and Pittsburgh was not one of them. I think that he's just going to have, it's going to be, Baltimore at home, vengeance, finally getting a hold of this Pittsburgh team without their best receiver. I just think that's what kind of gets me going. And I think, I'm going to talk about so let's talk about our must plays. Lamar is the must play, truly, for both of us probably is Lamar. But you have another guy, obviously.
I wouldn't consider Lamar must play because if you do side with Derrick Henry as being the guy that gets the 1 or 2 touchdowns, then go with him. So I'm not confident in Lamar for sure being in my line. Okay. I just know one of them will be and one of them won't be at the end of the day. This is not a three lineup build. This is a 1 lineup, similar to what you said about the other Showdown. Only 1 lineup, how we're going to do this. But I sided with my lineup, including Lamar. And if I'm going to put Zay Flowers in at 9,000 because he organically is just going to fit for me. I know you're going to be a little disagreement on that because Zay Flowers is actually your fade on this contest, but mine is Derrick Henry. Again, whoever, take a stand on one of the 2 up top. I don't think you need both. Pick one or the other, and I'm going to go with the Lamar in my line and Derrick Henry not.
Okay, perfect. And then for me, Zay is my fade. My contrarian play is Rashad Bateman because he has been really good. And if you're going to get the boom game, that's the guy you need. And then your contrarian play is the Pittsburgh defense, which I find very interesting.
Well, the thing is, nobody's going to play him because Baltimore is very hot right now. They're also almost a touchdown dog on the road, all that good stuff. But last time they played, had 9 fantasy points, very respectable, and they basically had a floor of 7, basically all but 2 games this season. So I think they're the number 2 overall defense in terms of fantasy points. So if this is just another ugly, grinded out game where it's just field goals and defense is what comes down to it, I think they're just going to be under 15 to 17% owned, and they're cheap. They let things fit. So that's kind of why they stood out to me on this slate.
Gotcha. So let's get into builds. My build is going to be epic. You're going to be like, holy crap.
All right. Then why don't you start off with it? You go the first look.
Lamar Jackson at cap. Okay. I'm going to go Mark Andrews. I am going to put Justice Hill in this line because I think Justice Hill makes some sense. I'm going to be going with the other defense. I'm not going to go with the same defense as you. I'm going to go with the Ravens at 4,400. I see that we're only on the Ravens. Hold on 1 second. Let me grab Pittsburgh. Can't not play them. I'm going to go with the fact that George Pickens is out. I'm going to go pick the second guy in command, which is going to be Calvin Austin. And then I have $12,100. I'm going to play both Derrick Henry and Lamar in this line.
Wow. That's pretty solid.
5-1. Yeah. I'm picking 13 points for Pittsburgh, so I'm trying to get away from the fact that
I'm always on that side. If you're projecting somebody under 13 or under 14 points, play their defense. Yeah. And so don't fault you for that. I just don't think it'll be that one-sided, but that's just a different game script. But I don't mind it. It's a natural build with what your game script is, so that's why I like it.
Yeah. And then for you?
So mine makes me a little nervous.
Okay.
Because the thing is, again, I'm playing 1 line in this contest, and I just kind of need to side with wanting to play Chris Boswell. but my first look as I built does not have him.
Okay.
So we got to figure it out. Maybe I put him in, maybe I don't. But I'm going to put Zay Flowers at my captain because he makes things work. I'm going to put Lamar. I'm going to put Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews.
Okay, I like it.
My bring back is Jalen Warren in pass catching work. And because they're cheap and they're the last guy in, I'm going to put in the Steelers defense.
Okay. I think it's reasonable. Just makes me worried. Steelers defense versus the rest of the Baltimore team, of course.
Right.
But I mean,
again,
you have to put somebody in down there.
This is a 20 to 13 game, like I'm predicting. Like I can still find an avenue where Pittsburgh at 3,600 still gets 7 points somehow, some way. And maybe Lamar doesn't have his 25-point game and isn't going to be as popular as a captain, as optimal as a captain as he should be. And then whoever catches the touchdown, a la Zay Flowers or Rashad Bateman or Mark Andrews, that's the optimal captain because just nobody else is really scoring points.
I mean, points against wise, they sit around the 20-point mark and 15, 7, 10, 15, 7, 9. They had 9 last time they played. Only gave up 16 points, but you think they're giving up 20? I mean, it's not that big of a difference, so I don't hate it. Makes some sense because this is a very hard slate. This is one of the hardest slates I think we've had because of the fact that we are probably going to have to predict raw points and then being willing to play maybe even both defenses. You could have got both defenses and both kickers in that Rams game. You would have been absolutely right with Puka at captain.
And I do want to say Chris Boswell by far running away as the kicker 1, but he's also would be tight end 2, wide receiver like 13 overall this year from a fantasy points per game perspective. And basically he's just getting at least 2 field goal attempts every week. Yeah. And most of those are coming from distance. So if it's fair weather, I think if price didn't matter, I'd rather get to Boswell over Pittsburgh if you only had to choose one. But he's got multiple 20-point games in there. He's got 16 games, 14, 17. Yeah. And then the floor of being 8 basically every game, but other than 2 out of 15 games this year, he's been less than 8 points. So
yeah,
he's as safe as it gets. He's the best kicker in this game at least, which is saying something because Justin Tucker is the best of all time.
We appreciate y'all hanging out with us. We're going to have, of course, this video, and we also did a Thursday Night Football video for the Chargers and the Denver Broncos game. And then we're going to have Maine coming up for Sunday, live stream on Sunday. Lots of bowl games going on. We're going to have me and Dustin are probably going to do some sort of playoff bowl game talk just to go back over everything because it's just such a fun time of the year. So very excited.
Yeah, only 2 more regular season live streams on Sunday the rest of the year. Week 18, we will not do a live stream, but we will play lines and do a first look and video. But there is no showdown that week because all games are on Sunday. And then playoffs, we still haven't decided how we're going to approach doing it, but we're going to do a live stream probably on the Saturday. But if we end up not being able to do schedule conflicts, then we'll just put out a first look for mains and then some showdowns and stuff like that. But regardless, a lot of content to look forward to and post. And then also we're coming up on our 1-year reflection period. It's been a whole lot of fun, been a great ride so far, and I'm just excited to keep on expanding and growing this community.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about, honestly. I mean, this football never ends. We act like it does. I mean, of course it ends. Super Bowl's in February, and then you have to wait till September. But we don't end because we have the draft, and then we're going to have other things going on.
Too early stuff.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten into the entertainment of games. We haven't started doing interviews with people.
Yeah.
All those kinds of various videos and things are stuff that are on tap. And so as soon as the season ends, there is no, we're going to take a month off and figure it out. No, we're going to come out with 3 to 5 videos basically every single week, all year round, as long as our schedule allows us to do so.
Right.
That's the only way we're going to get bigger and grow and get well known. So that's what I'm excited to do.
Yep. So we appreciate y'all hanging out with us, and we'll see y'all on the next one.